Hey, what is up, ladies, gents, and everyone else? We are here today to talk about video games, more specifically, the rage inducing part of it. Joining us will be Bill Fan, Victor Pham, and Steven Ishkin to talk about the subtle nuances of video game rage. So, if you're a victim of a rager yourself, or just a casual listener, you might find this podcast mildly interesting. I'm your host, Derek Nadian, and this is the insider's information of video game rage. So some of you might be wondering, what is this gamer rage you're talking about? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? Well, it's not pretty. According to the internet, there has been numerous accounts of people getting violent over underperforming teammates in video games, something that is supposed to be cathartic in nature. From minor F-bombs to death threats, video games have been plagued with hatred amongst the video game community ever since the release of old-school games like Duck Hunt and Punch-Out! Of course, gaming companies have evolved to include a feature that allows players to report one another, but still, that does not change the fact that there are angsty players, and if you have ever encountered these angsty players, then good luck, have fun. Now think, why does video game rage exist? Well, according to CBC News and University of Rochester, they suggest that video game violence is caused by the frustration of not being capable of mastering a game. To quote Rochester's article, any player who has thrown down a remote control after losing an electronic game can relate to the intense feelings of or anger failure can cause. In layman's terms, the player cannot get good. Further on the article, it compares the video game violence to sports anger, like when the referee makes a bad call and it causes a player or team to lose. In both cases, losing causes aggression and anger, which makes the game unenjoyable. On to another article, they theorize that the violent content of some games like Call of Duty or Grand Theft Auto may arouse aggression because of its obvious violent nature. From the article, a Brock University PhD student explained his rationale by stating, "The first thing you see in a violent game is the violence. I think one of the first things that may come to mind is that seeing this violence is going to make people more aggressive and more violent." And that's kind of been the main intrigue because of how graphic and obvious the violent content can be. However, according to the previous article, it stated that non-violent games like Tetris or Candy Crush can leave players as, if not more, aggressive than games with violence, if they're poorly designed or too difficult. To extend onto a more positive note, there have been articles saying that video game violence is actually a good thing for the player. From the New York Post, Why Violent Video Games Are Good for Kids, they had a research from Stetson University basically stating that violent video games decreases real-life violence. It is ultimately because of the fact that video games provide a platform where players could release their inner aggression and keep potentially violent people at home. Now that you have seen the two sides of video game violence, ask yourself this: is video game rage overall good or bad? By now, you should have a general knowledge of gamer rage, so without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic to Bill Fan.
Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Bill, and today I'm going to be talking about that one time I got really mad at a video game. I was playing Counter-Strike Global Offensive with my best friend Victor, and basically it's a 5-on-5 first-person shooter where you get to shoot other people and take over map objectives. So we queued up in a game of competitive. Basically, it's a game mode where you're playing with people at the same rank as you, and the ultimate goal of any Counter-Strike player is to reach Global Elite and have a 1% chance of going pro and making lots of money. I was feeling confident that day. We were going to win that game. I just knew it. I was going to get carried by Victor Pham. He's 3 ranks above me, so there's no way we were going to lose that game. So we get into the game, and from the very first moment, I knew what kind of teammates we had. The first guy, he was the foreign one. He spoke broken English. Like, you couldn't really tell if he had a deep voice or really bad cold. And then next there's the redneck kid. Those kids are the worst. He's probably at most 12 and probably never ended a sentence without a squeaky yo. Another teammate is the one without the mic. He's very quiet. Doesn't say much. Nothing actually. I mean, it's 2017, and if you want to communicate with your teammate properly, you gotta have a mic. And then last but not least, we have the DJ slash memer slash toxic slash not trying slash possibly throwing guy. He's probably mic spamming or flaming the other team or killing our own teammates. So moving on, I knew I had to be lenient for these slightly subpar teammates. So round one starts. Basically the pistol round, in which I just run down mid and try and find people to kill. So what happens first? I get instantly headshotted first by this one guy. Then he kills my teammate, also a headshot. Then he kills Victor, also a headshot. And then he kills the rest of the team with a headshot. So at that point, our team was just contemplating whether this guy was a smurf, which is a person who just makes an alternate account to play with lower level players, B, a hacker, which is a really bad problem in Counter-Strike, and I literally want to die every time I play with one. But we met with the benefit of the doubt, and we just told him that he's a better player than us. But at that point, I wasn't really worried. I was just like, yeah, we have Victor. He's 3 ranks above us. He'll destroy everyone on the other team, right? So second round. We're expected to lose because we lost the first round. We rush B. We got mowed down by that same guy with a shotgun. So it's nothing too bad, right? Third round, we have enough money to buy all our grenades, weapons, and whatnot. But you know what happened? Well, the foreign guy can't buy his own weapons because he forced up the second round. Of course. So I wasn't too worried. I was like, okay, whatever. He'll make do, right? So third round, we're going to do a smoke execution, which is basically how to take over map control by outsmarting the other team. It went terribly, if I might say so myself. One teammate decides to flash me, and then they come through long, and we get completely mowed down. Victor didn't even get a chance to do anything. And so fourth round, we were basically in a pickle right there. We've lost 3 rounds already, and we have no money on the fourth round. So at that point, everything just went downhill. The memer DJ Toxic guy apparently doesn't want to play the game anymore, so he starts killing teammates. In Counter-Strike, you get 3 chances. If you kill 3 teammates, you get kicked from the game. This guy takes 2, kills the 2 other guys. 2 other guys leave because he's throwing and don't want to play with him. And then this guy starts spinning in spawn because he feels like he's accomplished with himself by trolling other people on the internet. So at that point, I was just like, we're losing this game, right? The other guy that we were talking about earlier, the guy who was supposedly better than us, was actually hacking. He's spinning in the middle of the map, just killing everyone through walls. Victor is just like, as he always is, quiet, not helping. So I was kind of getting mad at him too. So at that point, I was just like, I can't take this anymore. I'm so done. I'm triggered. I'm fully triggered. There's this one guy in our own spawn just spinning. Victor's not doing anything. There's other guy who's spinning in the middle of the map, killing everyone over and over again. And the rest of the other team is just in their spawn doing nothing because the other guy's just spinning. And at that point, I was just like, I can't take this anymore. I leave the game and take a 2-hour ban. I was still mad the next day because I took the 2-hour ban, so I couldn't play all last night. And so at that point, I knew video games can get you really mad. And it's just a game, but sometimes you get emotionally invested into it.
All right. Thank you, Bill, for that touching recount of your woeful competitive games. And I know just how much teammates ruin the game with one small mistake. But moving along, welcome to the interview segment with your host, Victor, the Big Giggle Fam. And today I've invited a veteran player by the name of Dan Silent Reaper 9 Suresh Kumar. He's clocked in over 3,000 hours on a globally popular competitive game known as League of Legends. Welcome, Dan, to the show.
Hello.
All right, today we're talking about anger from the perspective of veteran gamers. So, throughout the years you've played games, how do you handle losing a game despite the fact that you performed amazingly, but every single one of your teammates performed like it was their first time playing?
Well, I can't really expect them to be as good as I want them to be. They can only play to the best of their ability. And if the enemy's just better than them, then that's okay. That happens.
Okay. All right, then let me coin this phrase to you. It's only a game. Why do you have to get so angry at something that doesn't impact real life?
Um, to be honest, this phrase only could probably just make everything worse because when you just state it's only a game, you show that to the person who's angry, you show that you don't care as much as he does. And he wants you to care as much as he does because all he wants to do is win the game.
Is there like a want, a desire to win in just everyone?
Yeah, some people only find the fun in winning.
Okay. Okay, so then how do you even start a game knowing that there's an extremely high chance one of your teammates will just be absolutely obnoxious to play with?
I try to play for fun and for myself. I just try not. Well, I do try to win, but I even if I don't win, I just try to stay okay with it because the game, you're supposed to have fun, and if you're not having fun, then why are you playing?
It sounds like fun is your top priority in games, and I'm sure that's what the game company's ultimate goal was. And since it seems that you know how to deal with toxicity from other people, do you have any tips for people who get an obnoxious person in their game?
To be honest, you just have to ignore them. It's the only thing you can do. If you can mute them, you can mute them. If you can just not focus on what they're saying, you'll do so much better for yourself.
All right. Thank you. So thank you very much for joining the podcast today. And
No
before you
problem.
leave, would you like to shout anyone out?
I'd like to shout out Croissant Corsair and the Bacon Buccaneer. They're great
Oh.
friends of mine.
Okay, once again, thank you for joining us today. So, from our interview, we can see that veterans have learned how to deal with anger from others through just understanding that everyone just has that one bad game. So, we can choose to just ignore the toxicity and play games for what they were made for pure enjoyment and delight. So, what happens when people intentionally lose a game? Or how the games are designed that maybe one player can throw a game entirely? Is it not just human nature to get angry occasionally? Let us ask Steven to take it away. Woo!
Why do we get so angry when we play video games? Because it makes us better players. You've got that boss down to just a sliver of health. One more hit and it's done. Then out of nowhere, his axe comes sweeping in and chops down your last bit of health. Your controller flies across the room as profanity roars out of your mouth. Sounds familiar? Of course it does. It happens to the best of us. Video games makes us angry, and we all know that. That anger can be caused by a multitude of things. That last minute combo that kills you, or your teammate rushing in at the wrong time and getting you killed. Of course, there's lag, technical fails, and the red ring of death. But I'm more interested in the human elements of this. But before I can get into the why, let's get into what's happening in your body when you're playing video games. Let's take for example the new and popular beat 'em up Injustice 2. You picked your favorite character and you're in round 3. You're in the lead but something happens. The tides turn and you start losing. Your heart rate quickens and your arteries tighten. Cortisol decreases to induce stress. And by the time you receive the final blow, you're on fire. Games like Injustice and Street Fighter, oddly enough, reproduce the same evolutionary process that prepped us for combat and dealing with potential aggressors. You know, like in an actual street fight. According to the scientists in the University of Missouri, the hormonal process that is seen in males playing violent video games is the same as males during reproductive and territorial changes. So even if you're aware that you're just playing a video game, the emotional and physical feedback is very much real. Now that we know what's happening in our bodies, is there a deeper reason why video games makes us so angry? Of course there is. Getting angry at video games makes us better players in the short term and in the long term. When you're playing Counter-Strike and your team is on a losing streak, you start to get angry. With this anger, you start making riskier plays that often lead to more success. So playing video games angry does make you better. On a different note, anger is fuel for long-term improvement. While anger is usually seen as a negative emotion that should be avoided, it could sometimes be useful and surprisingly positive. Games, unlike real life, gives the players equal opportunities and an equal amount of control. Take for example, you're angry at the lousy stock market. That anger wouldn't really be useful due to the many factors that are out of your control. But in a video game, you have the same amount of control as anyone else, and can use that anger to fuel your gameplay. Anger also makes people want things more. If you fail at something while angry, you'll have a stronger desire to achieve that win. So whether you're trying to get first place in Mario Kart, or you're trying to beat that last boss in Dark Souls, anger pushes you to try harder and be better. Getting angry also means we have an emotional attachment to the game. We wouldn't find video games so enjoyable if we didn't actually care about them. So even if it breaks my heart and raises my blood pressure, if I'm not throwing my controller at the wall or smashing my keyboard against the desk, then something would be seriously wrong. What do you guys think? Do you guys believe in anger? If so, join me in the dark side. And thank you all for listening to our podcast.